The Indiana Pacers were down 108-92 when Rick Carlisle called a timeout with 7:22 to play in the fourth quarter. After breaking from the huddle, his team went on to outscore the New York Knicks 46-27 while erasing a 14-point lead in the final 3 minutes of regulation to pull off an all-time stunner in overtime. Their mission, as they chose to accept it, featured not only rapid and timely shot making, as they quite literally bounced back in the clutch, but also rapid and timely substitution patterns that likewise met the moment to propel them forward to a 1-0 series lead. Here to help find the plot to an ending that was seemingly both strategic and stratospheric, Samson Folk.
I I almost don't have words, although I always have words. I almost have none for what the Pacers continue to do. I think being up 7 against the Pacers must feel like being in a long hallway in a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like everyone watching understands the inevitability of what's about to happen, but you just have to try and like eke your way out of it. And somehow that hand always finds the ankle and drags you back. I love the term and inverting it, stealing defeat from the jaws of victory, stealing victory from the jaws of defeat. I've never seen a team so talented and led by their star man, who apparently was 12 of 14 on to win or tie shots in the last 2 minutes this season. It is like everyone went and did it. It is almost incalculable. Who was it? Michael Pina had a great piece on the Ringer today where he said, yeah, by the way, the win probability was 0.0% at one point in time because it was unprecedented. It had never happened. It had never happened, Caitlin. And then it did happen. And it happened after bouncing off the back iron, ballooning up to the rafters and dropping down like the Phantom of the Opera, looking down. Like and Tyrese, again, he's below the free throw line and he's like, I will sprint my ass back behind the 3-point line and launch. And it goes in. Again, it goes in. It always goes in. That's why I'm not wearing a tank top. I had to wear the sweater because that was the coldest shit I've ever seen. And Aaron Nesmith hit 6 threes in a row. It's Vanderbilt again. He shot like 52% of Vanderbilt on almost 8 attempts per game in his sophomore season. And it's just money counting. This team, I have words, obviously, but oh my God, Caitlin. Oh my God.
The Nesmith thing, I mean, I've come to expect this from Tyrese, and I've come to expect to see him dribble at bigs and back out to the right wing, making a beeline and be able to make those types of shots. I've never seen one bounce in. You've seen some game-winning
He's
bouncing
like a
shots.
kid playing tag, Caitlin. Yeah, anyway.
That being said, what Aaron Nesmith was doing, I have not personally seen. Him going 6 of 6 during this stretch of play, and not just spotting up from a standstill. He's shooting off of movement. He's hitting pull-ups off of multiple dribbles. Then he is spotting up. Then he's hitting a one-dribble lateral 3 where he's throwing it out into space after coming off a pin down. He went 4 of 4 on threes with at least one dribble just during this stretch of play. What people need to know about that is, in this playoff run, he went 1 of 4 on dribble threes. Last year in the playoffs, the entirety of the playoffs, 1 of 10 on dribble threes. This year during the regular season, up until this point, 85.7% of his threes were attempted without a dribble. And this was something that I talked about. Somebody was like, well, who might be a regression candidate, a progression candidate with their shooting in the playoffs? And I was like, it could possibly be Nesmith just because he still hasn't really developed the ability to recapture his rhythm with one dribble sidestep threes when he's seeing those hard closeouts. Well, what worked in his favor up until this point, which I did some math on in the paywalled piece that I wrote over the weekend in the preview, is that because Nembhard has been running so much pick and roll through these first 3 series, a lot of teams have been hiding their smaller defenders on Nesmith instead. Hence, Brunson was also guarding Nesmith in this matchup. I was like, that could continue because he has a size advantage almost everybody that has been guarding him in the playoffs. He's hit a ton of contested shots, and they're contested in terms of the position of the body, not necessarily in terms of the contest. When last season he was being guarded by Chris Middleton, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Well, in this game, by the end of it, he is being guarded by wings and bigs. Admittedly, with some very confused coverages at times. But still, this is not a person who has been hitting self-created threes really at any point in his career, and suddenly he just becomes completely unstoppable.
Do you want the Star Wars reference?
I mean,
So
I'm probably not going to get it, but you feel free.
Han and the crew are running away from people in a spaceship. They're running away from the Empire. They're like, "Oh my God, we're gonna die." They find refuge in a cave. This is the cave is Brunson. The cave turned out to be a ginormous space monster that they've driven into the belly of. And awakened, suddenly the danger is more intense and real than what came before. Nesmith, oh my God, dude. The awake, like, oof. This is like the dragon metamorphosis. To do a Pokemon reference on top of my Star Wars reference. This is like Magikarp to Gyarados. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm not doing much. I'm doing everything. The game runs through me. Man.
I don't even know how to react to it, but the fact of the matter is, and I told you this before we hopped on, I said that this was seemingly both strategic in terms of how they were shape-shifting down the stretch and stratospheric in terms of the shot making. We've just talked about the shot making. But if I was like creating a ladder of the most important factors over these last 12 minutes, in which if that was a quarter of basketball, they outscored the New York Knicks in 12 minutes, 46-27. They almost put up a 50-point quarter in 12 minutes. I would have Nesmith, Tyrese, obviously, and then this is very contrary to my usual takes because I have a saying where I think that coaches are very similar to jockeys and that horses win races. Jockeys can certainly help or hinder, but the horse wins the race. I often think that with players, but I think that Rick really outmaneuvered the New York Knicks over the last 12 minutes of this game, like severely.
Evasive maneuvers. He has had like it's just the levers that he has pulled is so impressive. And every single one of these is just like knowing when to do it. However, Rick did have that incredible quote at the end of the presser last night where he said, NBA players can do amazing things. And like it's the harmony of Rick getting that brain going at 1,000,000 miles per hour and then the stratospheric shot making that you said. Impressive.
Are you willing to look at Mission Improbable to see all the different things that changed for the Pacers over the last 12 minutes?
I would love to look at Mission Improbable.
Everybody's going to have to bear with me here. There's a lot to go over. So the Pacers take a timeout at the 7:22 mark, which is where I wanted to pick up. About a minute and a half later, they had put Shepard in for Nesmith because Nesmith had 4 fouls. Nembhard also had 4 fouls at this point in time. They're running, the Knicks have, a baseline out of bounds play here. And what I think was telling is that Tyrese is guarding Josh Hart, but he literally is pointing at Ben Shepard and is like, tag me out of this because he sees the alignment, thinks they're going to run a screen-the-screener action between Josh Hart and OG, and he wants out of it. So he tells Ben Shepard to take it so that Nembhard and Josh Hart could potentially switch on that, or Nembhard and Ben Shepard could potentially switch on that action. The Knicks rejected it, and OG just went out to the corner, and then Nembhard chases him off the line and ends up taking that charge. So notably, if you paid attention there, the Knicks are playing Deuce McBride, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, and Karl Anthony Towns. A big lineup, which meant that Nembhard during these minutes had to guard OG Anunoby at the 3 while Nesmith was on the bench. So Rick went to Ben Shepard predominantly here during this particular stretch because he wanted somebody to pressure the heck out of the ball when Deuce McBride was bringing it up. And that's what Ben Shepard's task is. And as I said, Nembhard on OG Anunoby. They're trying to get Nembhard back involved because they know that Nembhard is in foul trouble as well. Unfortunately for Nembhard, they immediately end up going to Karl Anthony Towns as the screener, and then he has to veer. When he snatches back down onto Cat, that ends up being Nembhard's 5th foul, so he has to come out. Then at the other end, this is when we get into Nesmith just turns into he makes literally every shot that he takes. It's ghost flare action coming off the screen. And tellingly, again, want to point out that Jalen Brunson was guarding Aaron Nesmith from the start of the game, was guarding Nesmith for most of this game, and the Pacers made a very purposeful effort to constantly make him be guarding through off-ball actions and on-ball actions, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But the Pacers are picking up full court, and if you look right there, Aaron Nesmith's pointing at Ben Shepherd because he wants Ben Shepherd to take Jalen Brunson instead of him because he knows that he is in foul trouble, and also so that they can use Aaron Nesmith as an off-ball defender. And I know you're going to have some numbers to share here on Ben Shepherd in just a minute because Ben Shepherd is, as we mentioned, guarding Jalen Brunson. He's going to dribble right off of that pick. And something that I don't know if you're going to remember, but you and I talked about this briefly in the semifinals last year that I thought of all of the Pacer defenders, that while Ben Shepherd has a very low blow-by rate, his contests don't always have much effect, especially if he's playing against a more physical guard that can create separation. Brunson definitely fits that bill. However, the one thing that Ben Shepherd did that I thought was better than everybody else a year ago was that he consistently tried to force him back to his right and into the help on the right side of the floor rather than repeatedly letting him get downhill to his left. So, Samson, if you want to talk over the top of this about what you told me beforehand, feel free.
Yeah. So obviously we understand Shepard is the best contained defender on the team. And like he does have those limitations and he's not incredibly adept at disrupting shooters with his contests. However, coming into Shepard checking in and taking that assignment, not only dogging him full court, but Brunson had taken like 25 shots to that point, roughly. And 4 of them had come from farther out than 14 feet. Like he was penetrating the paint repeatedly. His shot making in the middle is incredible. But what Shepard was able to do immediately, and keep in mind, Brunson made 6 consecutive shots, 5 of them off the drive before this. Shepard immediately changed Brunson's shot diet into 3 straight step backs. And we know that like over the course of a series, Brunson is probably going to shoot okay on step backs. Brunson is probably going to shoot all right. And even with a contest from Shepard, but changing that shot diet late in the game, completely changing and keeping the shell alive for the Pacers so that they can push better going forward, so that they can, set up their offense better out of defensive stops, and so that they can rebound better because they're not rotating everywhere else. The breakdown, or I guess the ripple effect of putting him in, despite a really great step back 3 from Brunson, despite getting to the line, it's just like, and he did blow by him for a layup the one time. It was really, really impressive work from Shepard. And it's not going to be the answer the whole series. But in this game, not like pressing the Brunson button on offense along with the blistering shooting was what won them the game offensively and in overtime especially. Shepard slowing him down so that the Pacers could keep pace and surpass it is a really underrated facet of what happened here. Shepard was, in my mind, sublime. This is like, Brunson is such a special scorer that I'm looking at Shepard here as like, this is Iguodala against LeBron. LeBron is putting up historic numbers and they give Iguodala a finals MVP because it's like, hey, you actually slowed him down. And I thought Shepard was great for this stretch.
Yeah, because I thought it was equal parts searching and wanting to rapid fire show Brunson a lot of different defenders in this game.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're being frank, like TJ and Benedict Mathurin struggled a lot in that
Wolf.
matchup. TJ had a bit of a reputation for being a Brunson stopper from the series last year. And when you really looked at those possessions and the numbers, and oftentimes he was switching off of Brunson on screens, whereas they were having Nembhard do show and recover type of stuff when screening actions came. He wasn't switching off. So the numbers looked worse for Nembhard than what they did for TJ. And also, TJ just isn't the same caliber of point of attack defender a year later than what he was back then when he could play closer to the ball. So obviously, some of the stuff between TJ and Thomas Bryant in the first half was troublesome enough that they ended up were like, let's try Benedict Mathurin. And then it felt like any time that the Knicks ran a stack out action, that was just going to be automatic to what you're pointing out, that he was going to get downhill with his left. Like that's what was going to happen. Ben took some troublesome angles. I'm honest enough to say I tweeted during the game that I wanted Jarris to get a look just because I'm like, how much worse can this be at this point in time with what the coverage was from some of what the effort was? But they went with Shepard in part because at the beginning they wanted him on Deuce McBride. And then also, like you're talking about how important it was because Nembhard had picked up 5 fouls. Nesmith's toying with foul trouble. Like if he picks up an extra foul because Shepard doesn't take those possessions, is he out there in the game to be making his 6 of 6 threes that he ends up going off for? Yep. Potentially not. And then as it turns out, go ahead.
Also, like, it's not just Nesmith, but Nembhard as well, who they're searching for. Nembhard was incredibly important down the stretch offensively because he was the weapon they used to attack Brunson. And he, like, in a lot of the actions. And, like, when he was able to get him on that layup, when he's able to cut off, it's just,
Spoiler alert, we're going to get to
Oh,
it.
okay.
We're going to get to it. So the Knicks have gone back to their regular starters at this point in time with under 3 minutes to play. The Pacers, not all their regular starters. We still have Ben Shepherd, and they put Obi Toppin in because the Pacers were basically like, neither team is necessarily really stopping each other at this point. Miles had some struggles outside of the first quarter and especially later on, which we can talk about later. But they basically go to, let's get Karl Anthony Towns in action, empty side between Obi and Tyrese. And it felt like Tyrese was going to be able to get to pretty much anything he wanted out of that, especially with how many screen rejections he got. But after Nesmith had caught Jalen Brunson on that off-ball ghost flare action, the Knicks switched Brunson off of him and were like, let's put him on Ben Shepherd. So then, very tellingly, unlike regular season games that I had watched this year and playoff games last year, it was automatically, okay, Shepherd's the screener now. I don't think I've ever seen Shepherd as a roll man find an open shooter maintaining 2 feet on the perimeter.
Also, yeah, like just Shepherd like showing to the ball, catching, Tyrese making the read, scanning, finding Nesmith. Like, what a play, dude.
So then they end up trying a few timely doubles, which I actually liked against Brunson, especially in the minutes when Mitchell Robinson wasn't on the floor with them after they were no longer double big because the offensive rebounding threat wasn't as great, where at least it's deeper into the clock. And then when you have Nesmith off ball, he can dig down and help. I mean, it helped that Karl Anthony Towns missed that 3, but that was something that they also mixed in. And then by the end of it, I think this ends up being Shepherd's last possession. Like I said, they go to that stack out, and it felt like Brunson was going to get downhill to his left about just about anybody because they were trying to use a show with Tyrese. Then he's backing out even against Josh Hart, and there he even got to his left against Shepherd to get to the rim. But that was the one possession where that happened. They left Shepherd in for this last offensive possession, which was another, strategic type move because Nembhard's in the foul trouble and because TJ had the type of game that TJ had. There's no secondary ball handler on the floor anymore at this point in time. So a rare instance of Siakam as the bring up ball handler going in and creating space with contact out of a pitch action for Nesmith to have this much space then against OG Anunoby to pull up at the top of the key. I don't know what the Knicks were doing with some of the soft switching, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I talk about the switch pocket a lot and how that became a very early way that Tyrese was attacking, how more and more teams were switching against him. When the players back off, there's always that a little bit of space. The Knicks were giving Aaron Nesmith a lot of space with some of their switches that was happening. So another thing to keep in mind.
They thought the game was over, and that game
It's a
had been
very
over.
timely comment.
That game had been over 977 times in a row with those same qualifications. And also, as you say, like Pascal, that flip play, which he ran a million times with Fred VanVleet in Toronto and vice versa. Also, like there's a play before that where Brunson is on Nesmith again, and they're playing basically drop and Pascal runs a handoff with Nesmith going into the left wing. He hits the 3 there too. It's just, they gave them entirely too much space. And when they as it shook out at the end of the game, the Knicks were not, I think, persistent enough in trying to protect Brunson, and he got cooked alive out there. It was search and destroy.
And it was valuable to do it because he was playing with 5 fouls as well, in addition to what his defense was. But you say that the Knicks started playing not to lose, essentially. That's what stood out to me. Like here, Brunson catches the ball on this sideline out of bounds play, like attack. They were a little bit hesitant here. Then OG ends up messing up that play, but it's like you could have gone up by even more. Then they end up reviewing it. Ends up being Pacers' ball. Now they have the ball back, and that's when they run that pin down between Obi and Aaron Nesmith, where I about lost my mind when he threw the ball uphill to make that 3. I don't think I've ever seen Nesmith throw the ball along the arc into a 3-point shot. Now we're back in overtime, and the Pacers tried to put Miles Turner back in the game.
Wait,
and
are we not going to look at Tyrese's shot?
I have Tyrese's shot as a separate clip. I was going to ask you a fun question about it.
Okay, wait. Okay, go ahead.
So Miles is back in at the start of overtime, and what you can see from Brunson is he's just point switching out of everything off ball. Like, he didn't want any part of it. And then they end up getting that shot for Miles.
I can't believe he took that shot.
Yeah. I mean, he was a little bit jittery to start. He did get the block in the overtime, but there was a reason why they ended up going back to Obi. But the Knicks tried to go to that wedge roll. And what I thought was interesting here is the Pacers switched the wedge roll, which put Nesmith onto Karl Anthony Towns in the overtime. And when, we did the preview, we talked about, like, is Nesmith going to guard Brunson? Is he going to guard Towns? They weren't outright switching that purposefully. But it was somewhat telling to me that if Nesmith did need to guard Towns and they wanted to go double on those actions, that when the starters are on the floor, they basically just completely ignored Josh Hart in the weak side corner when OG was the
Yep.
cutter. And then that's the outcome that you're hoping for, is Josh Hart taking a semi-contested three. So it did leave me some questions that we'll get to later about how viable that could be if they need to go to something else. But then, like you talked about, it just becomes like Nembhard knows Brunson has 5 fouls, so why not just attack him head on with your decel step, as Nembhard likes to do, in order to get to the rim. Brunson is looking really fatigued to me at this point in time
Yep.
with how much the Pacers have asked of him, as well as how much the Knicks offense was asking of him. They didn't get anything out of that turnover directly, but I just think you can kind of tell that there's some lag at this point in time. And now it's just Obi and Karl Anthony Towns with everyone else flattened out again. Tyrese is getting any rejection he wants, and then that was the shot that you loved.
Oh, tough, dude. That was like obviously Tyrese's shot was the play of the game, but that drive right there, whoo, that says something to me, man. Reject the screen, take the contact, lay it in.
So at this point in time, Thibodeau has now seen enough of Karl Anthony Towns and decides to put Mitchell Robinson in at the 5 instead. So the Pacers are like, well, that's all right. Even if you're coming in for defense and you think you're going to start switching things, we're just not going to involve you anymore. So the Pacers go to completely inverted actions, which we talked about in the Cavs preview, as this is something that they could have done with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. This is what they did in the overtime to help generate points. It's just Aaron Nesmith and Tyrese and Nembhard screening for each other in the middle of the floor, both bigs being Siakam and Obi spaced to the corners, and they're trying to get Brunson, again, draw the closeout, swing, swing, swing. Brunson on the closeout. Mitchell Robinson has to help up. Obi Toppin, wide open dunk. The 3 guards up above the break involved in action again to get Jalen Brunson. Nembhard makes the great stampede cut right behind Josh Hart, because normally, it's a mismatch. Teams can get lulled staring at, is that guy going to hold up? And then you can lose the cutter behind you. I'm going to ask you what your thoughts of this sideline out of bounds play were, Samson, because another one, I think that this is a brilliant sideline out of bounds play to get what this was. So Obi and Siakam both starting in the backcourt. Nembhard, if people listen to my podcast with Jenny last year about why they value having Nembhard as the inbound passer, you can go check that out. But that's why he's almost always going to be in this role in clutch situations. So before I even press play, your thoughts?
Well, the Knicks go really high up court. Like the Knicks fall for it in my opinion, right? This is, I guess this is probably like the same ethic, or not ethic. This is the same tenet of why it works as like playing 4-on-4 with Tyrese, like negative space and art, the references you make. The Knicks just follow players instead of the ball here, I think. And the players, they over index on like who are the stars, and the Pacers just beat them because they overload on the guys, and they just run a play that goes to Obi Toppin because they overload in the wrong place.
People always ask when the Pacers start sideline out of bounds plays, into game plays with guys in the backcourt, why the defenders follow them, and like, why don't you just zone up and stand back at the 3? I'm like, because when there's that much momentum coming at you, and you have the caliber of shooters that are Nesmith and Haliburton, that would be pretty risky to just back it all the way up. Like, that's what happens when you have so many players on the floor who are capable pull-up shooters. But I think that what the Pacers were trying to accomplish when they're running yet another, kind of football style route play, is they were waiting to see what Mitchell Robinson's read between Siakam and Obi Toppin was going to be. If he had gone with Siakam, I think that they probably would have flowed into their normal end of game play, where Tyrese would have shot out past the logo and Siakam would have screened for him with Tyrese getting the ball. But because he didn't stay with Siakam and he went with Obi, like, this is crazy to me. How many basketball teams do you know in a conference finals game, 20 seconds left to go in overtime, you're only up by a point, and your 2-star players are standing on the logo so that you can generate a 3-on-3 possession that's going to be empty side? I don't really care about how bad Mitchell Robinson's defense is right here. There is a level of trust that Tyrese and Siakam are willing to just get out of the way and be like, that's what the read was? Okay, we're going to trust Nembhard and Obi and Nesmith to get something with that much space on the floor, which they typically, they definitely do with Obi getting the dunk. So yes, I can understand that Mitchell Robinson not at his best there. Also not at his best when Obi Toppin got the crashing dunk from the corner, but also
Mhm.
very strategic from the Pacers to be like, you know what, we're just going to run screen and roll with our guards in the middle of the floor and just let, Obi and Siakam chill out here. And on that one, we're going to make a read of who Mitchell Robinson goes with and then flow from there and have stars who, again, are so magnanimous that they're willing to stand on a logo in overtime
But
while
yeah,
you're only leading by 1 point.
this is the team that's up 1-0 in the ECF, and Tyrese with that big game last night surpassed Pascal as the leading scorer, but it's 18.7 and 18.6 points per game, the two of those guys. They're both hyper efficient. Tyrese obviously, like the dialogue that happened prior to the series about like who the best player is, uh, it was misguided, I will say. From what I saw, it was like, wow, these guys don't watch. But this team, it's like there's a different hero all the time, nonstop. And they're so comfortable with it. Rick, he said, like, not only is it the clutch muscle, it's like, you use that, you work that muscle, it improves. They're so comfortable in those situations, but they're comfortable in a wide variety of just situations up and down the roster because there's so much responsibility foisted onto these guys. And it's like the power of, hey, you have an opportunity. This is for you. We've built the offense in this way. It's your play right now. You make the read, you make the shot, you take it. And this manifests in a really incredible offense, but also an offense that can just run Obi Toppin like off a slip and score in crunch time. And the Pacers do not allow and do not abide the same easy looks to the Knicks down the stretch for what it's worth.
And the thing that I would almost counter there is I think oftentimes when I watch the Pacers is just because a play is run for a player, they're very cognizant of the shot doesn't have to be for me just because the play is for me.
Mm-hmm.
And they like to get out of each other's way, just as the two stars just did. Final defensive possession for the Pacers against the New York Knicks. Andrew Nemhard defending Jalen Brunson, the same player who was taken off of Jalen Brunson in the series last year in Game 3. When they need a stop in isolation, we've seen Brunson knocking down these big step backs in the prior 2 rounds to clinch games for his team. Doesn't do it against Andrew Nemhard on that particular possession. They end up getting an offensive rebound, and Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't make the shot either. Great moment for Andrew Nemhard, and also, which we'll get into after we looked at all that, I think that Jalen Brunson had, much like what we talked about with Donovan Mitchell and some of their late game situations, he's running out of gas. Like,
Yeah.
quite frankly, he was running out of gas at that point in time in the game.
Also,
Even though,
credit
which I guess
to
I should have led into, a disastrous stretch when he was on the bench at the start of the fourth quarter.
a
Personal
quick, a,
5-0
a
run
quick
for
note.
OG Anunoby, multiple 3-shot fouls.
So, a quick note to shout out DJ from the podcast we did with Knicks Film School. He did highlight that he thought the Brunson against Nemhard stuff was significantly overstated, and that he thought like Nemhard has a decent idea of or a decent ability to get Brunson into like tough shots and to hang with him, and that's like not as uncomfortable a spot as people might think. And it's nice to see Nemhard get the stop at the end. Yeah.
So as we saw in many of those possessions to close the fourth quarter, where they're putting Brunson in the middle of the floor and 3 guards are attacking him, so that people will know, I wrote my piece on Aaron Nesmith ahead of the game over the weekend, and I thought he was going to be the most important player in this series in terms of being, an X factor, a swing factor, and which player he was going to guard and what that would mean. And I said on the preview that I thought that they would play it to script and see in a road game whether they could quote unquote get away with guarding Cat with centers or with Obi or whoever it may be, so that Nesmith could stay on Brunson and then adjust from there rather than automatically going to adjustment that they basically didn't scheme or use
Mm-hmm.
against most teams during the regular season. But more importantly, I was like, if they can't guard Jalen Brunson, they have to force Jalen Brunson to guard. So in this game, he defended 23 picks as the screener defender. The Knicks gave up 1.5 points per chance when he was involved as the screener defender. Last year in the playoffs against the Indiana Pacers, a 7-game series, Jalen Brunson defended a total of 32 picks as the screener defender. So game 1, 23. 7-game series last year, 32. Never more than 7 in any of those games. And almost more tellingly, because of how the matchups have shaken out now that both teams are significantly different, in the first game they played against the Knicks, which was the second game of the regular season, Jalen Brunson went from in the playoffs mostly guarding Nembhard last year to guarding Aaron Nesmith from the very start of that game. And in the entirety of the game, he defended 3 screens as the screener defender.
Yep.
But a massive shift in their approach to this game.
We talked about it on the preview podcast. I said I thought the Celtics constantly let Brunson off the hook. The Pacers did not. The Pacers wanted it bad. They hunted after him with like a fervor that was unbelievable, and it worked. And credit to them. Not only was it just like the simple stuff at the end of the games where it's like, yep, bring him up, we'll get him in. But there's also like actions with a little bit more sauce on them at the start to get Haliburton for that inside hand layup at the rim. It's just, although all layups are at the rim, I suppose, Samson, you dummy. But anyway, the inside hand lay, it's just, I thought it was fantastic. And I thought the diligence to keep working him into action while still playing with that pep and pace.
They're still running offense, for sure.
And that's partially why they didn't let him off the hook, is because it is the Pacers' way of attacking that mismatch. It isn't this laborious, like Jaylen Brown flattens out and takes like a contested 16-foot jumper. It's like, no, we're going to get to the rim. And it's because we brought this guy up and we're going to make a killing here to the tune of 1.5 points per possession, which is massive numbers.
And by not doing that, which is why I thought game 6 or game 5 against Boston was telling, and that's not me trying to drag Jason Tatum, just a difference in how the Celtics were running offense. It doesn't let OG and Mikal Bridges load up in the gaps when you're not running stagnant things while going at those guys. So to provide people with, I like a dramatic before and after, as everyone should know by now. The uniforms are the same, but this was actually from October when the Pacers played the Knicks on the road. And as I mentioned, Brunson guarding Nesmith, a lot of the time when he was weak side, he was just standing off the ball. And if he did catch it, he has the entire right side of the floor to himself. And he automatically just gets back off the ball for the Pacers to go into more actions where Brunson's not having to do much of anything for almost this whole game. This is from the first quarter of game 1, where when they get the ball to the weak side of the floor, it's deliberate that they want to get Brunson into basically a Chicago action, a pin down. Yep. When Nesmith runs over the top of that, that's intended as a fake handoff to get the ball back to Tyrese, and then they flow directly into a ball screen to get Brunson again. So that means Brunson's through a pin down, through a fake handoff, and now back into a ball screening action that's creating less rim protection on the back end of that action for, as you mentioned, now Tyrese able to get the layup at the rim. They also did screening actions to get Jalen Brunson onto Siakam, and difference being is when Siakam was getting some of the small mismatches against the Knicks were more apt to load up on that, which is why you can see OG starting to double. Aaron Nesmith being spaced one pass away. Turns out that worked out pretty well, though. Nesmith again, right away, semi-transition, getting Jalen Brunson on the ball against Nembhard. Then it's Siakam falling with another screen. So he's the screener defender. Now he's the on-ball defender. Like, they were typically chasing actions back to back almost every time. It's never, there was momentum in almost everything that they were doing. So Nesmith first screener, Turner second screener. Now Nembhard, Tyrese getting the hostage dribble on Brunson to get back to the rim. They switched the matchup. They tried to put Brunson onto Nembhard because of how much Aaron was screening. So Aaron was like, well, I'll be the first screener of a double drag, and you be the second screener of a double drag, and we'll still get him. And then Miles Turner will set a step-up screen. And this is how he racked up 23 picks in the game. And this is why when you're seeing Nembhard get the stop, which, like, credit to Nembhard that he was able to get that on the final possession of overtime, but also look at the workload that was asked of Jalen Brunson throughout the game by the time that they got to that possession.
It's good work. It's honest work. It's a hard day's work. Honestly, I don't think there's much to add on top of that. They did it. They looked for him. They found him. They made it work.
On the flip side, I'd like to know from your opinion, we touched on some of it, but they guarded Brunson by forcing him to guard. They weren't always successful with their actual guarding of Brunson. So off the top of your head, was there anything that you thought like, hey, that's something that they could do better, or maybe this is a tweak that they could make, or is it like we're just going to have to live with this guy going off and hoping that he runs out of gas at the end of basketball games?
I think Jeez. I think like maybe a couple times they were a bit too happy to leave like a switch out there. Like Miles got stuck out there, Pascal got stuck out there, and it was like, you know what, we're gonna leave him out there. Otherwise, I liked Shepard coming in. Obviously, we talked about that. The not just on defense, but the TJ and Matherin stuff overall made me want to tear the hair out of my head. Although there's not that many to do it with. It like watching that TJ ball on one end, getting cooked on the other. I was just like, oh, this is bad because it was like the bench, the bench, the bench. But Deuce McBride and Mitch, those guys were the ones who really brought the like oomph in this game. Uh, I didn't scheme up any type of stops. I think I
Did you
would.
expect the Knicks bench to make more threes than the Pacers bench?
I didn't expect that, although I expected Mitch Robinson to be an insanely large problem, and
A
he
bowling
was.
ball turning people into bowling pins?
He
It's
are
just
we gonna
flattening people.
are we gonna talk about that later at all, or can I just say
No,
quickly?
interject what you want.
The bowling pin thing is so apt. It was absolutely. I don't like. You can't always tell how strong an NBA player is because like physiques can betray, but the fact that he lines up with two guys at the free throw line and just like walks everybody into like a crash, and it happens 8 times a game. I'm just like, what an unbelievable effort to guard this guy. And he's not even touching the ball. You're just trying to beat him in a race for it. You probably have to face guard him and like ask, the Thunder are really good at this, is like face guarding a bigger guy and having a guy like Shea or J Dub or Caruso or whoever come swooping in, like go get the ball. And the Pacers maybe could make a tweak like that, but my God, man. Well,
Yeah,
anyway, how
I
do
don't know.
they
It's tough. Like I remember the game where Sabonis got out rebounded by Kevon Looney when the Kings played the Warriors, and he was face guard boxing him out, and like you can't spot the ball, so like you better have guys that you can rely
Mhm.
on to swoop in like that, or you're kind of screwed.
Anyway, stopping Brunson, I think they were a little bit too lax, but again, it's game one on leaving guys out there and being like, okay, let's see it. Maybe they did want to see it. Uh, but otherwise, I do think it's that Donovan Mitchell thing. I think it's that the Pacers have been like a top 10 defense for months and months on end. I think that the Pacers have had good defensive responses. I think they've played together. And despite everyone just looking quickly at like how many points Giannis had, how often Donovan Mitchell scored, they're going to look at Jalen Brunson's stat lines. They're going to say the Pacers are getting cooked. It's just not going to be the case. I think that's the way that they're trying to. They play the full game. It's not two sides. It's one court. They make the work everywhere, and that's how they have to make it happen, I think.
If there was anything that I saw, like we're 3 rounds into like, let's see if TJ can guard Kevin Porter Jr. Let's see if TJ can guard the guards for the Cavs, and like if he can't do it, then let's see if Benedict Mathurin can do it. Until they end up getting ultimately back to Ben Shepherd, or in some cases they have tried Jarris. And like I said, just because like just on the sheer fact that Jarris has more length than these other guys, I think that having someone with length is very important in the Brunson matchup to be able to
Mm-hmm.
cover up some of the counters that he had. So like I can understand not always being as trusting in Jarris at the offensive end of the floor, and like it is an exercise in trust. Hence why I wrote the piece
Yep.
going into the Bucks series. But like there was a certain point in time where I'm like, how much worse can it get? But I mean, they did make the call to put Ben Shepherd in against Deuce McBride, and then that worked out for a bit against Brunson. So I'm honestly to the point where I'd be more willing to lean there than
Can
I
I
would be to running that back again.
Oh, this is what that makes me think of posing this question to you is like, okay, let's say TJ doesn't get as much, and then it's maybe just less TJ. And what Nemhard in this game had how many fouls? 5 by the end of it, right?
Hmm.
Uh Nesmith had 5. In his like Shepard had 1, Matherin had 1, like TJ had 2. But if you're having less TJ, where are you trying to direct that portion of offense? Because as much as I'm not thrilled with TJ Ball, the Pacers need a chunk of every game to be TJ Ball. At least that's the current plan. If Shepard replaces him, it's not going to be Shepard Ball. And that asks more creation of, let's say, Nemhard or Haliburton. And that brings into like Tyrese danced. Tyrese put up shots. Tyrese did a lot of work in this game. Where do you guide that offense in lieu of that?
Siakam.
Yeah.
I mean, I think because, I mean, that's the stuff that I liked late in the fourth quarter where they don't have another ball handler out there. Just let Siakam bring it up against pressure, and that ultimately worked in their favor a little bit to just let him run handoffs and create contact given the way that he's guarded. Like I'm fine tilting a little bit more of that there when Siakam's out against the bench because, I mean, we'll talk about it, but I think that this is going to be a tough matchup for him overall. So if he's not going to be involved as much given what some of the matchups are, I think it's okay to let him do a little bit more of the handling responsibilities, especially if they're not going to press him when he's bringing it up, which
Yeah.
given who some of his matchups are, I kind of doubt that they will. But a quick look at some, like a few things, like I said, TJ on Jalen Brunson, like if he's going to get downhill to his left, like this was kind of a little bit of an issue last year where I was like, once he breaks the free throw line with his left, like I want it to be like a whole body stunt at that point in time. Like if you're already this far off of Josh Hart anyways, why not just force the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands?
Mhm.
If you're practically going to have 1 foot in the paint, just go ahead and do it and force Josh Hart to make a stampede cut or do something else from there. If they're going to be running like empty side 2-man actions between Brunson and Cat, I thought they probably could have been a little bit more communicative, and maybe this lands on Siakam where, off ball switch it and get him as the low man rather than, Tyrese or Nemhard when Brunson's headed downhill. I'd rather give up, Nemhard having to step in front of OG potentially cutting than Tyrese having to make a play from there.
Yeah.
Even if it's just to make it a little bit more intimidating, if nothing else, to keep Brunson from getting that extra step downhill. And then just the one other thing between Cat and Brunson is anytime that there was like, well, this is actually Matherin, just to show that stack out action and some of the angles that he took where Brunson's then just getting all the way downhill and drawing fouls. Like that was a tough play, but um, I have hope at times that Matherin has more size than TJ, so it makes sense on the surface. And he did get one stop against him where unfortunately
Yeah.
Miles gave up an offensive rebound, and then there ended up being a switch where he shot over the top of Tyrese. But in this case, Miles going down and doubling down on Mikal Bridges actually brought up an interesting point where Nemhard had to recover out to Karl Anthony Towns. Towns doesn't try to back down Nemhard or really do anything here. He just gets back off the ball. And while Matherin does try to duck under and beat Brunson to the spot, Nemhard reaches down and knocks it away from Brunson. But point being there is Cat had Nemhard on him at the wing and he didn't really do anything about it. Here, Matherin gets switched on to Cat. Cat tries to, create a driving lane. They cover and clog that up. And then when he catches it against Matherin, he doesn't try to back down Matherin with the clock running down. He just tried to shoot a set shot over the top of him. And then that's also what happened in overtime when Miles and Nesmith
Yeah.
had to switch this. They didn't deliberately switch it. But looking back at that same possession where, like, especially when Josh Hart's out there, I think you might be able to cross match this, and then you might be able to take away some more of the Brunson stuff just by virtue of you being able to switch the screening actions. Because
Yeah.
if Nemhard's pressuring him up the floor and you have somebody else on Cat and you switch it, he's not going to get as much downhill momentum. And then if you can double, depending upon who else is out there, that's still something they have in their back pocket. Although, like I said, I understood going into game one why they wouldn't go to that right out of the gate, why that would be maybe a mid-series thing that they would try, because you are the road team. You might as well see if you can get away doing the thing that you've always been doing, and as it turns out they can. So, but I mean, I don't know how sustainable it will ultimately be if Brunson's still able to rack up 40-point games. But when you're in overtime and you're fighting for your lives to stay afloat, while as you termed it, a monster's basically chasing you, perhaps it does work in your favor.
Yeah. There's two big the deuce adjustment I think is very much in the cards. That
Is it
would
though? Is it though?
well, that I think that would trigger potentially more Pascal stuff. That could get him more involved offensively if the deuce stuff, but like the deuce stuff worked. The deuce minutes worked. It helped a lot. So I don't know. I don't know if the Knicks will go that way. Like we talked to the guys and they were like, I don't think it'll go that way. And they said that the fan base doesn't think it'll go that way. So I don't really know.
I
But
mean, the Knicks did toggle between double big and which big they were playing during that stretch, but like I said, it wasn't just rapid and furious shot making from the Pacers. It was rapid
yeah,
and furious adjustments for the Pacers where they were ready to shapeshift to other things in response to what the Knicks were doing. Well, again, I will admit, if Knicks fans are listening to this, your defense was not particularly good. Obviously, you almost gave up 50 points in 12 minutes, but that's why it's hard to guard the Indiana Pacers. That's why it's harder to guard the Pacers than the prior 2 rounds of when you're trying to switch in certain circumstances when your team doesn't have a lot of experience switching.
It's Pacers did the damn thing. Siakam? Are we going there?
Yeah, your thoughts on Pascal Siakam in this game?
So
That's a very thoughtful question. Talk
yes.
about Pascal.
Yeah. So this game, I think, was showed exactly what I might have expected from this series. Is that, and Pascal had like a really bad shot making game in this one, and still they found ways for it to work, and it definitely wasn't his best game, but he has to be, if we're going chalk on these matchups, the beloved bowl between OG and Pascal is defense first. Pascal did not want to try OG. They kept him away from like a good deal of stuff to keep OG away from stuff, and that's normal. That's the Pacers being able to go to other things. That's good. That's fine. That's their luxury. And OG had to overextend himself trying things on the other end, and it went poorly against Pascal. So there's that. But when Pascal got the switches he desired, it was printing money. It was really good. But if the shot making, like, that's what makes it really difficult for Pascal in this matchup, is it's like you have to just feast the moment you get away from a guy like OG, because Pascal can deal with Bridges, Pascal can deal with Hart, he can deal with, Brunson, he can deal with McBride, whomever. He had a tough time against Cat because his shot making wasn't there. And then so this kind of just makes it like Pascal offensively has to be egoless. Kind of Miles Turner wrote that big piece for the Players Tribune, like, hey, we're happy to have it be anything. We have no ego on this team. We just want to win. Pascal doesn't have to be involved in things, but when he gets the look he wants, he has to like dominate in it. He has to keep running out in transition, and he has to hit some jumpers. It can't be like forcing it really hard against Cat when Cat is just down low. You have to hit some jumpers. He took 2 threes. He missed them. They didn't look particularly close. It's not the series for him, but there's still so much room for him to impact. And he hit some of those. He pulled some of those levers. But in lieu of perhaps like McConnell, maybe less, that might get him going in some regards, using his gravity as like a, or the lack of gravity, I guess, as a screener and a pitch play guy. I don't know. It's a tough ask, but he's a max player. So you hope he figures it out.
But the stuff we were seeing and why they weren't going at the Dean Wade matchup is extra exaggerated here.
I'll say just quickly, because when I was looking, and as we know, the synergy stuff is not perfect, but when I was looking up for a Jonathan Mobo piece, there's 3 players who are under 0.7 points per possession allowed to pick and roll ball handlers on over 150 possessions. It's Chris Dunn, Jonathan Mobo, and Alex Caruso. But Dean Wade was also in there. Dean Wade is very good on defense.
Can I just say that something that bugs me about synergy is that's just usage.
Yes.
Like, and like that's reflective, because if you're a good defender and it's usage, then that it's still going to show up. But like, what about all the other picks? Like, sometimes people can look worse on synergy than they actually are because it's only counting the stuff that ends in shots, free throws, or turnovers. What about all the other picks that you defend and stop that don't end in any of that? But sometimes
They don't
we cite
exist.
a lot of these things as if, like, I don't know.
They're in-season tournament statistics. They live in another world.
Yes, exactly. But so Siakam doing some of the ball handler stuff here. Quick screen from Nembhard. They were willing to switch between Josh Hart and OG Anunoby. Josh Hart's still a decent matchup for Pascal. Like, he did quite well against that in the semifinals last year because Josh Hart tends to guard with an arm bar, which is pretty effective for Siakam's spin move game, and then great from Nembhard to cut down to the dunker spot there. I thought it was a really good juxtaposition too, because not too long after Nembhard had made that cut, Jalen Brunson tried to walk Nembhard into the post. Siakam went to double. OG tries to cut off of that double, and then Tyrese playing free safety makes a really good read there to anticipate it. So almost back-to-back possessions of similar things between the Pacers and the Knicks. Miles making that good fake shot to find Pascal at the other end. But this is kind of like the Pacers ran this play 3 times in this game, and I think it's somewhat telling of what some of the challenges are going to be to get Pascal involved. So they actually call it two-side, and just so people know, this is a staple of every Rick Carlisle playbook. He ran it between Luka and guess who? Jalen Brunson when he coached in Dallas. So they're actually running Pascal off those staggered Iverson screens. And typically, Obi would have followed and set the over screen to get an empty ball screen for Siakam, but they know that OG's not going to switch that with Cat involved. So instead, TJ just goes over to the top and screens OG to get Josh Hart. Siakam gets off the ball because he knows that Ben's going to get the step up screen for Nesmith. And then that's what you're talking about when you're saying, unselfish basketball from Siakam and the things that he's going to have to do within kind of the ecosystem of the team as Nesmith sets that step up for Matherin. And on the pop, he immediately burn cut as soon as at the point of the pop, gets into the paint, sucks in OG. Unfortunately, it's TJ McConnell on the weak side. So you're not really getting a lot of great spacing there to generate an open 3-pointer. But if it had been somebody else, that's, playing within the team. So there, same exact play again. Benedict Matherin, though, is the person running off the staggered Iverson so that Siakam's setting that empty screen for Ben. And again, you can see that when Siakam's the screener, they're not going to switch it when OG's involved. So he ends up just spacing to the corner. And this is one of the threes that he got where it's still pretty contested. So I think that particular play type kind of speaks to what the challenges are going to be for him. But I did want to highlight the fact that even though it was a play for him and the shot didn't end up being for him, there was intermediary stuff that Siakam was still doing to grease the wheels for his teammates within the offense that they're going to need.
It's also it's not at the level of Tyrese, of course, but there is like Pascal's presence out there means that the Knicks are using resources to stop things that they don't want from him, and they have to expend those resources so that there's opportunity elsewhere. And the Pacers, as we've talked about, we've kicked around the weak link discussion, all that kind of stuff. It really has showed in a bunch of games. Turner going for 20 plus. Nesmith just scored 30. Nembhard, of course, we know he can have huge games. He can be the dominant pick and roll possession player on the roster. Haliburton, Siakam. It's just like they make teams solve a problem at the front end of the play by the presence of a guy like, 18.7 points per game, Haliburton, 18.6 points per game, Pascal. They make the defense solve that problem. And then they go to something that is available because the defense is busy solving the other problem. And credit to the other guys for making plays in lieu of that. I think I've used the term in lieu like 6 times on this podcast.
I have some phrases like that when I go back and edit things, I'm just like, will you please shut up and quit saying the same words?
Lay up at the rim.
Okay, so final thing that I have prepared for you, which I thought would be fun because you've told me a few times that you were covering the Raptors in their championship year.
That's funny.
When someone else made a bounce clutch shot, admittedly in a game 7, Tyrese makes a bounce clutch shot in this game. You said we're really not going to watch Tyrese's clutch shot. Of course we are. So I'm going to let you watch it. And then you tell me which bounce clutch shot was better, Samson.
Oh, come on. It's Kawhi's. Because like this as a shot, I think the 4-bouncer statistically
there was more suspense.
The 4-bouncer statistically, I think, is probably a little bit more likely. Like the shot on its own is, I think Tyrese's is more stupendous because like Kawhi is shooting, yes, a fadeaway over Joel Embiid, but the context couching these two shots is really tough because what Tyrese is the greatest comeback in playoff history as far as just like the probability of it. But the Raptors, it won the series, game 7. But also, like, Tyrese, the chutzpah, my God, they're down. Like Kawhi, if he misses that, they go to overtime. If Tyrese misses that, it's a loss at the Garden. It's,
There's no timeout. He just had to get it and go. And that's what he conjured, Samson. That is what he conjured.
And I was saying this before the podcast, and since I don't really have time for banter today. My apologies to everybody. I know the banter is beloved, so I'll take this here, an insight into me. Tyrese was not. I really like Tyrese, but he's not my favorite play style of guard. My God, has he won me over? And it's not like I was a hater or anything, but my God, has he won me over? To sit and watch this guy and to, of course, do it alongside of you, and you're able to unearth and show like this is the unseen benefit of things. But there's that. But in this playoff run, Tyrese has just been like, you'll see it. It's no, there's all the unseen stuff, but I'm going to show you in your face repeatedly what I do. And like the tough drives to the rim, the series winning layup, beating Giannis in isolation, these insane sprints into the middle, sprints back out, playing tag, running away from guys, and then just launching at the rim, back rim, 10 feet high, boop, drops in. The immensity of his shot making and the immensity of his brilliance as an on-ball playmaker and the immensity of his gravity outside of that, all of this has coalesced into the numbers like roughly 19 and just under 10 assists per game does not properly convey what the hell has been happening here. Not in the slightest. And there are guys who are going to go, at the end of their playoff runs, it says like 35 points per game and maybe like 8 assists. And you might be like, that's like twice as much. Tyrese is multiplying in all of the unseen areas. And oh my God. I'm an analyst, so I'm not supposed to be a fan, but I've become quite a fan of his game. I'm thankful that you invite me on these playoff runs. Last year's was a lot more frustrating because players were more limited. The team wasn't as vast in what they're able to do. This year, what a treat every time you tune in, and led by that man who continues to wow me. What a player.
You might say that he is a star and would certainly be a star if they won a championship, would you not?
We need to cover a finals game. We need to aim higher.
Looks like a number one option.
No, because he only scores 18.7 points per game, so that's not allowed.
I can see it. Well, I mean, what I've learned in the last, as I've told people through the playoff run, is that mostly we don't enjoy basketball.
See it, by the way? You see the path before you?
We enjoy complaining about basketball, and we find new and unique ways to pick apart all of the stars of the conference finals on nearly a nightly basis, it seems. But
yeah, people don't like basketball. I think
they like complaining about basketball.
The more vast something gets, it's just going to draw people in, and negativity does really well online. And so, which speaks to bigger things.
To the audience here, I think that we were mostly positive here, highlighting the very good basketball that was played by the Indiana Pacers during the 12 minutes when they outscored the New York Knicks 46-27. What I've reflected on, especially with the number of people who reached out to me ahead of the Eastern Conference Finals wanting to know if you would be on the keyboard to help keep this playoff run running, is I made a joke last night on my own message board in which I wrote the two biggest acquisitions for the Pacers over the last year, Pascal Siakam, and obviously you writing for my outlet, because I don't know where the Pacers would be right now if this wasn't occurring.
Yeah, it's symbiotic.
That was a good representation of a lot of our conversation.
That's funny. Oh, yeah.
Well, what are you eyeing at? Where are you off to today? The Meadow? Where are you going?
The climbing gym. Josh and S.
In a sweater.
Well, it's not been nice out the past. I've been writing more because it's not been nice out. And I've been watching more prospect tape because that's what I do. I write these insane adrenaline junkie filled Pacers games, and then I quietly go watch some East Washington Big Sky Conference basketball to see what Cedric Coward is up to. So that's what, yeah. But today, climbing.
You have to even out the highs and lows.
Yeah.
Those last 5
Exactly.
minutes were a lot to handle last night.
I was like, I was like, I I remember it was when Pascal was still a Raptor, and the Raptors had this early season comeback against the Spurs where maybe it was like 7 points in 2 minutes. Like, wow, what a comeback. And I watched a 30-point comeback from the Kyle Lowry-led Raptors against the Mavericks. I've watched games, but the Pacers have like 4 of the most improbable comebacks in the space of a month. And then even going back to the regular season, they had 2 absolutely improbable ones. I
Oh, they
don't
had more than that.
Yeah, 7 yeah, probably like 7 actually. I don't understand because it almost seems like it's what we talked about with Benji, where I said, like the Knicks are shooting this percentage in the last 4 seconds of the shot clock, which isn't necessarily predictive. And Benji says, well, this has been a thing. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And the Pacers, like I said, the horror movie, you're in a long hallway. Every time you look back, the shadow is 4 feet closer. It's just like it comes off as an inevitability against the improbable nature of it. I don't know how they achieve this. And it's different every time. Like it's just basketball.
It's almost like a Christmas movie where they're like, in order to save Christmas, we have to have more Christmas spirit to power this.
Yes.
And every time they get
Yes.
one more improbable win, it powers the belief that they'll get another one just a little bit more.
Powered by belief. Yep. I
A Christmas miracle.
Yeah. Unbelievable, man. I say like the mandate of heaven, which again, somebody called me out on this. They're like, it's a little bit much of the God stuff. And I was like, okay, I guess, whatever. But the mandate of heaven is not about God necessarily. It's about being the leader of China and being ordained by God. That is the mandate of heaven. The Pacers have it. Oh my days. Unbelievable.
What a team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's pretty much all we have to say about game one. I will say that I tried to title this, in movie form because it felt like we were watching a movie. I do wonder, because obviously there was a lot of plot twists in terms of the shot making and what all happened at the last 12 minutes. But I do wonder which team will blink first in terms of making some series changing adjustments
Mm-hmm.
and what we have in store in game two. But a follow up question, you say we need to set our sights higher for covering the finals. I think that both of us picked the Pacers in the preview. I don't think our sights were right there. Were
Well,
they
no,
not?
but no, I'm saying like we'll cover the finals. Like it is no longer should be because the Indy 500 is a thorn in the side of. I'm saying in person.
Oh.
I'm saying we need.
Suddenly,
Okay, whatever,
now
dude.
that the
I
Pacers
already
are
agreed to it.
gonna go,
We
and now
planned.
that you might get to see Shea Gilgis
You're too much.
Alexander in the
You're too
finals.
much. You're way too much. I agreed. First round, second round, third round, fourth. I agreed.
Oh, you were eyeing other plans. You were eyeing other plans.
It's my dog, It's my dog. People who don't know the context will be like, "Is it his friend?" Whatever. But
Secret.
no, we need to cover. There needs to be 2 people in. Was it Bankers Life Fieldhouse? Is that the
Gamebridge,
game?
Samson.
Oh, right.
Gamebridge.
Gamebridge. It needs to. I'm supposed to know this. There needs to be 2, maybe
Somebody
even.
hasn't watched my popsicle trips where I've stood in front of the
You know
sign.
what's
Someone
funny?
hasn't
You know
watched.
what's funny is I got this wrong before, and you made the same joke, and I just keep memory holing it.
I've
Nola
even
brain.
sent you pictures of stuff
Yeah,
from outside of there.
Nola brain, as it were. But I think there needs to be 2 people, Caitlin and Samson, wearing basketball she wrote merch, covering a game at the finals. I think
I mean,
that's
I even did go full sleeveless. Like, I'm
yeah.
not
But
gonna hold you.
Tyrese is so cold. He's so tough. I had to wear the sweater.
I had to go with the hot girl basketball shirt because they closed with Obi Toppin in a starting lineup and they scored 46 points in 12 minutes.
And the Obi Toppin piece I wrote. They will focus so much
Much on
elsewhere
the
that he will
stars.
creep. Let's
Samson the
go.
Prophet.
Well, not nearly as much as you. I like, how's it feel to be the best basketball analyst in the world? Oh, we
Oh
should have
boy.
front loaded. We should have front loaded
Do you
at
know that
this.
if we ever have a podcast where I actually name a podcast and it's not just, Caitlin and Samson talking on Caitlin's YouTube channel, I think it's going to be called The Front Runners, is it not?
That would be funny. If it was a Pacers podcast, yeah. But if it was like NBA wide, I think we'd have to have something with more mass appeal. And like, we won't be so lucky like my other
I
podcast
don't
with
think
Trey.
anything that I do has mass appeal. It's not really my brand. My
You know
brand is
what?
being niche.
It's the same for me, but what helps is being funny. Being funny and laughing a lot gets a lot of people in. I noticed that because Trey and I we talked for like 18 minutes about Jacoby Walters' screen navigation, but we just bust up and people are like, "This is great. I like this," because I think it's just easier to listen to. So you and I laugh and you make fun of me. So then I laugh really
I
hard.
can be funny.
I know.
People
This is
say
what
this a lot.
I'm saying.
They'll be surprised. They'll be surprised when I have funny tweets or I say funny things. I'm like,
No, yeah, it's quick wit, sharp, especially in your commentary around my Indiana arrival or my short responses. Yep.
okay, well, I'm gonna let you close it out. Whatever else you want to say here, that way you can get to rock climbing and hopefully the rock climbing gym where popsicles are sold. That's all I can. That's the best wish that I have for you.
I'm gonna have a creamsicle at the end of it. You bet
You've
your
earned it.
bottom dollar.
You've
Yes.
earned that creamsicle.
Yes. Okay. Here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, theys and thems. Let me tell you something. Caitlin Cooper is the best basketball writer in the world. And she writes for her Patreon, Basketball She Wrote. If you have the means to support, please do so. Is how we sustain this. And without this type of coverage does not exist. Full stop. Many people have attested to this. It's the truth. If you have the means, please support. That's about it. And I thank you very much for listening to us. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It helps get the message out further. It helps more people see this.
A quick pause before you say your last phrase. Samson is also the best basketball writer in the world.
Oh.
Hence why I've brought him in from out of market to do this coverage and to do these podcasts with me. And I'm sure that many, many people agree. And that's why you should subscribe, because you don't just get me, you also get all of his writing and all of his thoughts and all of his talking and all of his monologues that he continues to use that I clip that then bring people to the podcast.
You very clearly brought me on, one, for good vibes, or two, because I clearly am connected to the power of belief that is supporting the Pacers. Only Blake, that bastard, Blake Murphy, I watched that game with him. That's the only game that the Pacers have lost where I've written about it. It's his fault.
And Star Wars'
Otherwise,
fault, if we're being honest. And the
but I didn't
Star
even
Wars
write.
movie franchise.
Yeah. Apparently, season 2 of Andor is really good. Josh is begging me to watch it. But anyway,
Okay.
Caitlin's the best. I'm not the best. She can say whatever else she wants, but it's not true. Don't believe her. Believe me. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps push it to other people who will see this, who will learn about basketball and learn to appreciate the Pacers and basketball more. And hopefully give us money. I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, go Pacers. Have a blessed day and goodbye.